have the questions, we have the answers. Welcome to AOSD-Words Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to learning the ancient Hebraic mindset. If you have not subscribed, please do so. Make sure you comment, like, share, and hit the bell. Y'all have a blessed evening. Stay in shalom.
Out forever. But we're finna go to this lesson entitled Words Matter. It's entitled Words Matter. So let's get ready to get started. Words. When reading scriptures, it is important to not let our biasness overrun scriptures so we get the full meaning of the text. If we concentrate on the wording, we can get a better meaning of what the author or authors is or are trying to convey, regardless of the language barrier. Because I know a lot of people be like, hey, what does it say in this language? What does it say in that language? Let's parse it out and see this, see that. Okay, that's good and dandy. But the English is sufficient enough, trust me, y'all. But what is the author trying to convey, regardless of the language barrier? So words, W-O-R-D-S, words do matter. So let's, using words and using background and ancient knowledge and tradition and etc. Let's talk about the Christian's favorite, one of the Christian's favorite book of tradition, as well as people today. People are infatuated with the book of the Revelation, and they're so infatuated with it, trying to find out what is the mysteries behind the book of Revelation. What is all of this symbolism? What is it trying to say, and etc. And us being full predators, we say all things have been fulfilled already, so it doesn't really, if you want to know what the symbolism is behind it, you just got to go to the ancient world. And people tell you, no, today is actually about today, which is not. So one of the things, one of the disconnects we get approached with is, when was the book of Revelation actually written? Because if the book of Revelation was written at this time period, the full preterists are right. But if the book of Revelation was written at another time period, the full preterist is wrong, according to most people's logic in the 21st century. So today, in the first half, we're going to talk about the Revelation. Was it written, was it authored 70 AD, or would the consensus say 96 AD? We're going to venture down this rabbit hole to show you how 96 AD really doesn't work according to more of a historical, logical sense. So get your notepads out, get your popcorn, coffee, your drink of choice or whatever, because we're finna go down this rabbit hole. So Revelation 70 AD or 96 AD. We're going to give you the quote from Saint Irenaeus against heresies, book 5, chapter 30, section 3. 533, Saint Irenaeus against heresies. Okay, so this is the quote that everyone runs to go against full preterism, to say that the book of Revelation is a late date book, aka 96 AD instead of before 70 AD. So this is exactly the quote that they use. This is what Irenaeus stated. We will not, however, incur the risk of pronouncing positively as to the name of Antichrist. For if it were necessary that his name should be distinctly revealed in this present time, it would have been announced by him who beheld the apocalyptic vision. AKA, he's saying, if John wanted us to know who the Antichrist was, he would have told us. He said, if John wanted us to know who the Antichrist was in our present time, he's talking about his time that he lived, John would have said it. Because, well, let's talk about that in just a second. This is the rest of the quote. For it or he, they don't know which Greek word it stands for. They don't know if it's it or he dealing with this Greek word. But for it or he was seen not very long time since, but almost in our day towards the end of Domitian's reign. Now, Domitian, one of the emperors, he reigned from 81 AD to 96 AD. So Irenaeus is saying that John either, well, we're going to talk about the different the different ways we can look at it. But he's making the whatever John is talking about or what's going on with John close to his day. He said it's happened at the end of Domitian's reign, right? So, according to Dr. Taylor Marshall, he wrote this article in 2025. There's three different ways to look at this quote from Irenaeus. So we're going to go over the three options. This is the first option. For it, you remember they didn't know if the Greek word is it or he. For it, that is the vision, was seen not very long ago, but almost in our day toward the end of Domitian's reign. So that's one way to view what Irenaeus' quote meant. This is the second way to view it. For it, that is the written book, the letter sent out, the revelation, that it. For it, that is the written book, was seen not very long ago, but almost in our day toward the end of Domitian's reign. So now he's saying that the it right there could actually be talking about the revelation that was written in the letters, and that it was seen almost in their day toward the time during the time or towards the time of during the end of the reign of Domitian. Sorry about that. Here's option 3. Instead of the word it, what if it meant he? For he, that is the apostle John, was seen no very long ago, or not very long ago, but almost in our day toward the end of Domitian's reign. So what he's saying is that, hey, using that quote alone is a problem because there's 3 different ways that you can look at it. So automatically applying it to one way or another way is not the best way to actually look at it or do the information or to acknowledge when the authorship of the book of Revelation occurred. But if they thought the book of Revelation was about their day, then by default, the Antichrist and etc. should have been recognized by that community. It should not have been a question. But here, Irenaeus is still making it seem like he didn't know who that Antichrist was, even though John had presented the information about the time that they was living in, if you take it from that perspective. So it's just, you just can throw it up and just look at that, however you look at it. Hey, y'all, make sure y'all tap the screen, show some hearts. Come in, get the information, but also show some love so more people can come in and get it. Thank y'all. All right. So now, this is more. Now we're going to use historical logic to see if the written 96 AD makes sense. Okay. So according to Irenaeus, whatever dealing with the revelation, John or whatever, if he's talking about the vision, it had to happen after the reign of Domitian. So this is a quote from Saint Jerome, who lived around the 4th century, about the tradition that was handed down through the church about John. This is what it says. This quotation is from Jerome's commentary on Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. He stated, the blessed John the Evangelist lived in Ephesus until extreme old age. His disciples could barely carry him to church, and he could not muster the voice to speak many words. During individual gatherings, he usually said nothing but, little children, love one another. The disciples and brothers in attendance, annoyed because they always heard the same words, finally said, teacher, why do you always say this? He replied with a line worthy of John, because it is the Lord's commandment, and if it alone is kept, it is sufficient. That's powerful in itself right there. He said this because of the apostles' present mandate. Let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the household of faith. So this is what Jerome said. This is the information that was handed down to Jerome. That when John was in Ephesus, this happens after he leaves Patmos. John is in Ephesus. He's so old. He's so weak that he has to be carried to the churches, to the gatherings. And he's so weak and so old after the Isle of Patmos. And then we're not talking about 20 years after Patmos. We're talking about almost immediately after Patmos. He was so old and fragile and feeble that he could not even muster words in order to have a conversation. Now, if they was really thinking about the book of Revelation being about their time, don't you think they would have had a plethora of questions? And don't you think that John might would have a little bit more urgency to muster up some words about, you guys, the time is now. Flee, get ready for the Antichrist. The beasts coming out of the sea and the land. Don't y'all think that he might have would have said more than just love one another? And once again, we're going to talk about that later on. That this is the tradition. Out of everything that John could have told the follower of the Messiah himself, out of everything that he could have delivered to the people post Isle of Patmos, the message was the same. Love one another. That's sufficient. They want to know, hey, why do you keep saying that? And John told them, that's the Lord's commandment. And if that commandment is kept alone, it is sufficient. Forget about the other stuff. If you just keep that one thing, it's sufficient. And once again, we're going to talk more about that later on. But that's what John's message was when he was in Ephesus, right? Once we go to Irenaeus against heresies, book 3, chapter 3, section 4. Irenaeus against heresies, book 3, chapter 3, section 4. And this is what was stated. Give me 1 second. I forgot to find Sharp real fast. There you go, Sharp. All right, there we go. I'm back. This is what was stated. Then again, the church in Ephesus, founded by Paul, and having John remaining among them permanently until the times of Trajan, is a true witness of the tradition of the apostles. So we talking about another emperor named Trajan, Trajan, however you want to look at it. He ruled from 98 CE to 117 CE. So that's first century all the way up to the starting of the second century. And he have, during that time period, the tradition is John was in Ephesus at least around 98 AD. So at least around 98 AD, John was in Ephesus. So this is what else was stated. Tradition tells us that St. John employed a scribe or secretary named St. Prochorus, who is one of the first deacons recorded in Acts chapter 6, verse 5. Prochorus was a Greek-speaking Jew, and so his communication would be Greek and perhaps more advanced than that of John. So now we have church tradition saying that John actually had a scribe to transcribe the revelation to the 7 churches. So now tradition is saying John himself didn't write it. He had a scribe to write it, which is more, it's important. Let's keep going. And there's one of the pictures of John and his scribe. So as time progressed, or more information, this is something else to look at. Ecclesiastical Histories, Book 3, Chapter 23, line 104, by Eusebius states this. At that time, the apostle and evangelist John, the one whom Jesus loved, was still living in Asia and governing the churches of that region. Having returned after the death of Domitian from his exile on the island. Now we know Domitian died 96. So Eusebius is talking about what happened after year 96, or what happened during year 96. However you want to look at it. We don't have the exact information. Was it year 96 or after? But after Domitian's death, John was able to return to Ephesus. Now we're finna start getting interesting in a second. So this is a manuscript that they found from Suetonius. It's on page 374, an ancient Greek manuscript from Suetonius, Suetonius. This is what it says about Nerva. Who was Nerva? He was the emperor that came after Domitian, but before Trajan. So there was another emperor that only lived for like a year and a half, something like that, year and 4 months, and then he died and Trajan took over. But the point is, what happened under Nerva? So we got Domitian dying in 96. We find out that John is able to go to Ephesus after Domitian's death. So let's find out what events history said led up to John actually being taken off of Patmos. This is what it says. Nerva, he ruled from September 18, 96 CE to January 27, 98 CE. An old man succeeded Domitian and ruled for 1 year and 4 months. In life, he was private, modest, and vigorous. From the nobility, he adopted Trajan as his son. John the Apostle was recalled from exile. Nerva died in his 72nd year of age. He was enrolled among the gods. The end. So this is proof that John existed from a historical source. But the point is, okay, so we got Nerva starting to reign September 18th, 96. Most of the talk against full preterists is the book of Revelation was written in 96. So now this is something from BibleStudy.org. It states that John lived a long life and died close to 100 AD. Evidence suggests, sorry, hello. All right. So, evidence suggests the last apostle ended his days in the Asia Minor city of Ephesus. So, according to BibleStudy.org, which is going off of tradition, John lived and died close to 100 AD. Now, let's make this make sense. We have read from St. Jerome that it was handed down to him that John was old, feeble, couldn't walk. He had to be carried to the congregations, to the gatherings, and he could not talk, right? So, if that's at least 96 AD or further, let's say no later than 105 AD, then what are the odds of John being able to recollect and make sure the revelation was transcribed accurately a year or three before he was so old that he could not even regularly communicate? So are we trying to say that maybe, just maybe, it hit him all in 1 year? Maybe at 96, year 96, year 97, he was in good spirit. He could transcribe, he could make sure the book of Revelation was transcribed. He could recollect it. He made everything was perfect. And then 2 years later, he was so old he couldn't do anything. Now, I understand progression, and usually things progress. A person gets worse and worse as years go on. I'm just saying, historically, it's not making sense for Revelation to be written in 96 AD or beyond if John is old and feeble in at least 100 AD. He's old and feeble in 100 AD, yet in 96 AD or 97 AD, he's straight. So when he's in his 90s in 97 AD or 96 AD, if he's in his 94, 95, he's not old and feeble and can't barely speak. But when he's 98, 99, now he's old and feeble and cannot barely speak. All I'm saying is it doesn't make sense for it, the book of Revelation, to be written in 96 AD or forward according to the historical references, because John was elderly at this time and he could not get around. He could not walk. He had a scribe. He could not, well, sorry, the scribe came before, but he could not walk. He could not talk, and etc. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense historically, even when we use the things outside of the Bible. Just dealing with history, it doesn't make sense that it was written at a late date when John was already an elder. He was already elderly. So now we're going to look at the Revelation, the dating of Revelation conclusion. So the full preterists, we take it that the book of Revelation was written in the late 60s and not the late 90s. Okay. So we put the book of Revelation written 30 years before, at least 30 years before the futurists say that it was written. So when we got the book of Revelation written, John can get around good. He could walk, he could talk. He probably had a great memory. You know, he can make sure everything was transcribed correctly. So when we look at and we're going to look at historical evidence, but when we look at it, we say, hey, he wrote it around this time period. When other people, the futurists, look at it, they say he wrote it around that time period when he's old and fading away. It's up to you to determine what makes the most sense. But I just want to give you that information. So now, as we looked at the historical information about the logical historical information about the dating of Revelation, let's look at more historical information. This is dealing with the Syriac version, which is one of the older text version that we have, the older codexes that we have dealing with the book of Revelation. It states that the Syriac version of the New Testament, which dates back to the 2nd century AD, and some people actually got it the late 1st century, but the 2nd century AD, the Revelation was written during the reign of Nero, making a date of 64 through 68 AD. So the Syriac version, which is one of the oldest versions we have of the book of Revelation, is stating in documents that the book of Revelation was transcribed during the reign of Nero. So that's 64 through 68 AD. Okay, that's one. There's something called the Muratorian fragment. Muratorian. Muratorian. The Muratorian fragment, dating back to 170 through 190 AD, 2nd century as well, states that this work of John was written during the reign of Nero. So we have two 2nd century documents that says that the book of Revelation was written during the reign of Nero, okay, before 70 AD. The Aramaic Peshitta version has a remark that places its date prior to 70 AD. The title page of Revelation states, this work of John was written right after the reign of Nero. So we got two sayings during the reign. We have one saying right after the reign of Nero, all putting it around 70 AD, you know, that time period. We got something called the Monarchian or the Monarchian Proludes. The Monarchian Proludes. Monarchian. Monarchian. This dates back to 250 through 350 AD. That's the 3rd, 4th century. Claims that Paul also wrote to these 7 churches, possibly Romans, which was a circular letter. It went out to many addresses, following John's book, thus placing the book even before some of the other Pauline epistles. So we have historical documentation that says the book of Revelation was actually written before Paul wrote all of his letters. It's stating that it's written during the time that Paul was alive. And we know that Paul was supposed to be killed by Nero as well. So this was written before that happened. So that's putting the book of Revelation late 50, late 50s, early 60 AD. And that's why I look at Paul's letters as a great decoder for the book of Revelation, may I add. And this is according to biblical-eschatology.org. And it says, a quote arguably attributed to Papias, 130 AD, 2nd century, states that John the Apostle was martyred before the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. So they're arguing about what that actually meant and etc. But there's another quote. right there. So the four preterists got a pretty good leg to stand on historically outside of the text that the book of Revelation was written prior to 70 AD and not late 96 AD when John could not get around and when John was feeble. Okay. But once again, let's say this out loud: words matter. So when we look inside of the text, the book of Revelation, I'm only going to give you two verses: Revelation 1 and 9 and Revelation 1 and 10. I, John, your brother and partner in the tribulation and the kingdom and the patience, endurance that are in Jesus, was on the island called Patmos on account of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. I was in the spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet. So it doesn't take a linguistic scholar to understand all of the past tense that John is using in order to relay the message. In other words, John was off of Patmos when he transcribed the book of the Revelation. No matter what date that you look at, John was already off of Patmos. That's why he said, I was on the island called Patmos, and not I am on the island called Patmos, or I will be on the island called Patmos. So he did not use any future tense or present tense. He used past tense. And he's telling what happened when he was on Patmos, and not saying that he was writing this letter when he was actually living on Patmos, or when he was martyred, or when he was told or exiled to Patmos. This is something that happened after Patmos. And after Patmos, John was in the kingdom and in tribulation after Patmos, showing that the tribulation that John was talking about happened after his exile, as he stated this: I, John, your brother and partner in the tribulation, that's present tense, and the kingdom and the patience, endurance that are in Jesus, was on the island called Patmos. So the tribulation period was going on after John was exiled to Patmos. So, all that being said, the whole Antichrist and etc. had not been, or what he's talking about is supposed to take effect after John was on Patmos. And we take that to be first century, um, around the 60s AD, 66, 64, 65, no matter how you look at it, around that time period. Okay. That's when we say he was exiled. That's not when he wrote the book of Revelation. Okay. Of the Revelation. All right. And it was transcribed according to historical documents. And if anyone has a map or has the internet, go look at the Isle of Patmos. Find out all of the ancient history about the Isle of Patmos in the ancient days, and you would see why John is seeing this imagery. John was on the sand of the sea. If you go to the Isle of Patmos, guess what the island has? It has sand and it has sea. What does that mean? That means that the Lord was using his um surroundings in order to teach a lesson. The Lord was using the surroundings that John was in order to teach the biblical lesson. Okay. So that's one thing about words matters. Now we have the second half. And when I'm done with the second half, I'm done because y'all know I got work. So I'll be done. This is the second half of Words Matter. Once again, a lot of people, I was included in this uh, uh, consensus, did not understand what's going on in Genesis, right? Genesis 1 through 3. So today I'm going to show you what's going on in Genesis 1, chapters 1 through 3, so you can actually understand how to acknowledge the truth of what was stated, as well as if you teach it more accurately, teach it on a better scope than it's been presented. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through it so you can see the better scope and teaching of it. First of all, everyone, Genesis 1, 26 through 27 is a time of the end days time. He literally told the ending from the beginning. So once you start talking about Genesis 1, late Genesis 1, understand this is a time of the end prophecy. This is one of those end days, last days prophecy, and it wasn't fulfilled in the days of Noah and etc. This is an end days, time of the end prophecy. So let's get ready to go through it now. Genesis 1, 26 through 27. Words matter. Words matter. Genesis 1:26 says, and God said, let us make man according to our image and likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the flying creatures of heaven, and over the cattle, and all the earth, and over all the reptiles that creep on the earth. Verse 27. And God made man according to the image of God. He made him, male and female, he made them. First thing first, you should understand that pops out is these actions was created by God. Mankind had nothing to do with it. Let me say it again. Genesis 1, 26 and 27 specifically teaches that these actions had no human involvement, all created by God. And this is what God said, and this is what God created. Man according to his image and likeness. Okay? Now, let's look at the wording in Genesis 3, 5, and 6. Because people think these are the same people, which it is not. So listen to what Genesis 3, 5, and 6 says. And the serpent said to the woman, first of all, the serpent is not God. The serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die. For God knew that in whatever day ye should eat of it, your eyes would be open, and ye would be as gods, knowing good and evil. What was stated there? This is something that mankind had their hand into doing. This is something that mankind created. See, ye should eat of it. That's something that man is doing. This is man's involvement. This is the reality of when man is involved. This is something created only through the actions of man. Okay? Genesis 1:26-27. Only through the actions of God. Genesis 3:6. Through the actions of man. So we got the actions of God compared to the actions of man. Now, what is similar? What is similar? God made man in his image. You will be as God, knowing. So this is all around God and how mankind is viewed dealing with God. Either man is going to be in the image of God this way, or man is going to be in the image of God that way. See, a lot of people have lost exactly what Genesis 1 and Genesis 3 is teaching. They don't get it. They don't know. They don't know what's going on. So we're going to give you the correct understanding so you can read the Bible with a more spiritual eyes, or if you're going to teach the Bible, you can teach it the correct way. So either you're going to be as God this way, or you're going to be as God that way. That's what's going on in Genesis 1-3. You got two ways to be like God. One way or two way. One way was being made in the image of God. One way, God did it all. The second way was you're going to have all the knowledge of God, but man did it all. See? Two different ways. Same scenario, being like God, two different ways. Either you're going to be in the image of God, created by God, or you're going to do something, you're going to partake of something and be like God. Only one of them led to death, though. So now, let's go to Genesis 3:6 and Genesis 3:23. This is about what they partook in, Genesis 3:6. And that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. So the tree, the point of the tree, one of the temptations of the tree dealing with man's action was wisdom. Now, look at Genesis 3:23. And God said, behold, Adam, which stands for mankind, not a single person named Adam that was in the garden and the Lord took a rib from him. That's not how the ancient Jews looked at that. The story itself can be used as a single person because it's used to teach lessons, but the application of the story was supposed to represent mankind in general. A lot of people don't get that information. They don't understand that. They don't understand how that first Adam in the Bible represents them a certain way, each person a certain way. And the new Adam represents each person, or well, we'll talk about what the new Adam represents. Because for some reason, people say nobody can sin and everybody perfect and God does this and that. That's not what the Bible taught. All right, so now it says, and God said, behold, Adam is become as one of us. He didn't say Adam is one of us. See, y'all, once again, words matter. Words matter. Adam is become. So this is something that Adam wasn't in the beginning. Adam has now became this, one of us. So in the beginning, Adam wasn't one of them, but now Adam has become like one of them, which means what? If Adam is like God now, Adam is in the quote unquote image of God because he's like God now. So now if he's like him, but not the exact him, he's the image of him. Hopefully that makes sense. So now Adam is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now let's any time he stretched forth his hand and take of the tree of life and eat, and so he shall live forever. So now, Adam has become like one of us. Adam Adam has the knowledge that we have. Adam is now in our image. He has the knowledge that we have. But a lot of people do not know what that tree of knowledge of good and evil is. So we're going to let the Bible explain it. Deuteronomy 4 and 6 says this, and ye shall keep and do them. So this is talking about the law, right? And ye shall keep and do them, for this is your wisdom and understanding before all nations. Now, notice he didn't say, this is your wisdom and understanding before God. He's told people this is going to be their wisdom and understanding before other people. That's what he stated. This is your wisdom and understanding before all nations. And as many as shall hear all these ordinances, still talking about people, not talking about the Lord, and they shall say, behold, this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Let's go back to Genesis 3 and 6. And that tree was to be desired to make one wise. Go back to Deuteronomy 4 and 6. This is your wisdom and understanding before all nations. The great nation, they will say, this great nation is a wise and understanding people. All right. Deuteronomy 4 and 8. And what manner of nation is so great, which has righteous ordinances and judgments according to all this law, which I set before you this day. So what's stated here? What's being presented here? That these people who had the law, all people were supposed to almost envy them. What manner of nation has such great wisdom, has righteous ordinances and judgments according to this law? Now, let me show you a deeper understanding of what's going on here. Once again, y'all remember, words matter. Once again, words matter. Leviticus 26, 2 through 4. Ye shall keep my Sabbaths and reference my sanctuaries. I am the Lord. Who did the Sabbaths belong to? The Lord. Who did the sanctuaries belong to? The Lord. Verse 3. If ye will walk in my ordinances and keep my commandments and do them. Who did the ordinances belong to? The Lord. Who did the commandments belong to? The Lord. Verse 4. Then will I give you the rain in its season, and the land shall produce its fruits, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruits. So, what did Moses say in Deuteronomy 4 and 6? This is your wisdom What do we find out about this wisdom that's theirs, that's in Leviticus 26, as well as rest of Torah? This wisdom was all of the things that belong to the Lord. What did he say in Genesis 3:23? And God said, behold, Adam is become as one of us to know good and evil. Genesis 3:6, this was desired to make one wise. So, what did Adam have? The wisdom of God. He had God's law. Understand what is being taught in Genesis 3. We're going to go to Genesis 2 in a minute, but Genesis 3, right now, we find out that the image of God was based off of law. Let me say that again. For them to be created, or for them to become the image of God, they did it through law. And within the law, they did to become the image of God, it was always a give and take. The only way that we receive blessings is if we have these certain actions. And if we do not have these actions, then we will be punished. That's their working understanding on being in the image of God. Let's get back to it. So we're looking at what's being taught in Genesis, which is mankind declared to be in the image of God based off of law. And within that law, that image of God concept was we have to be perfect via law in order to receive the benefits of being in the image of God. We have to be perfect via law. All right. Let me show you more proving this. Exodus 25 and 40. See, today, once again, this is for you to understand what the Bible is teaching so you can read it with better clarity, or when you go teach it, you have a more accurate way of teaching. And I'm not trying to boast and say that I'm the smartest, but what the Lord has shown me, I'm trying to show you so you can have a more accurate way of teaching. So listen to what Exodus 25 and 40 states, because a lot of people missed it. They missed what Moses stated. Exodus 25 and 40. This is what the Lord told Moses. See, thou shalt make them according to the pattern showed thee in the mount. So the Lord told Moses, using the law, you will produce images. He's producing, well, I don't even want to say the image. He's producing shadows. Let me say shadows. So people might look at images right there and say, oh, that's what we need to do. No. He's producing shadows. Make sure that's saved. So what the Lord just did, he just told Moses, I'm going to give you a bunch of shadows. Since you guys are my image, right? You're going to be the image of God through the law. Since you're going to be the image of God through the law, I'm not going to give you the reality. I'm going to give you the shadows. See, people didn't miss it. They didn't miss that the Lord right here was showing the law wasn't good enough. Since you're going to be my image through the law, I'm going to tell you to give them the patterns. They're not going to get the real thing. They're only going to get the patterns. Now let me prove that these image bearers were getting the shadows. Exodus 4 and 22. And thou shalt say to Pharaoh, these things said the Lord, Israel is my firstborn. Israel was the son of God. And if you are a son, you are considered the image of your father. What's the proof of that in scriptures? Genesis 5 and 3. Genesis 5 and 3 says, and Adam lived 230 years and begot a son after his own form and after his own image, and he called his name Seth. Who was the son of Adam? What was the son of Adam considered? Someone after Adam's form and image. Adam's son was considered someone after his form and image. So when the Lord, same Holy Spirit that had them to transcribe Genesis 5 and 3, when the Lord says that Israel is his firstborn son, who is Israel supposed to be the image of? The Father, or let's say the image of the Word. The image of the Word. So now let's look at the full picture again of the statement that I made. Since Israel is going to be my image after the law, using the law to be my image, they're only going to get the shadows. They're not going to get the real thing. They're going to get the shadows. Genesis 2:17 states this. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, of it ye shall not eat. But in whatsoever day you eat of it, ye shall surely die. You guys, you want to be my image after the means of the law? You want to use the law to represent my image? I do not want you to be my image like that. Let me say that again. The Lord is showing, I do not want my image bearers to be my image after the law. That's not how I want my children to be my image. That information is something for God. That information belongs to God. I don't want my children using that information to represent me. Don't use the law to represent me. That's for my domain, where I am at. That's not what I want from you. That's not the requirement I have from you. You're doing too much. Quit trying to produce something. Quit trying to produce the fruits I don't want you to produce. I never told you to go right. I go right. I wanted you guys to go left. I got this sold up, but you want to go right. But if I go right and you go right, who's going to go left? Hopefully, all of this parabolic information you're understanding. But let me show you that the tree of knowledge of good and evil represents the law. Let me show you. Genesis 2:17. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, of it ye shall not eat. But in whatsoever day you eat of it, ye shall surely die. Romans 7:9-10. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. What did you say in Genesis 2:17? And whatsoever day ye eat of it, ye shall surely die. And according to Philo, it's supposed to be the death. In the day you eat of it, you shall surely die the death. And then you got Paul come around and said the same scenario, just a different way. Paul said, I was once alive apart from the law. Guess what? Adam was once alive apart from partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. How you think he's having a conversation with the Lord? Adam is alive. Paul said, I. What does the name Adam represent? Mankind, the sons of God. Paul is saying, I was once alive apart from the law. Adam was once alive apart from the law. But when he ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he died. Listen to what it says. But when the commandment came, as soon as the commandment came, sin came alive. When the commandment came, sin came alive, and he died. Just like in whatsoever day you eat of it, ye shall surely die. The same story, just said different ways. Understand what the Bible is trying to teach. Paul had it correct. The Ebionites had it wrong. Let's go to Romans 7 and 10. The very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. The very commandment that promised life, what was it? Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That commandment. What's another commandment? You shall not surely die, for God knows in the day that you eat of it, you shall be like gods, knowing good and evil. You shall not surely die. What was it? Another one? Do not eat of it, because if you do, you shall die. The very commandment that promised life, either it was knowledge of God, the knowledge of good and evil to be like gods, or whether it is don't eat from that commandment that came that promised life, it proved to be death to me. As soon as he got the commandment not to eat it, what followed? He ate it. As soon as it was told you will not die, but you will be like God, what happened? They partook of it and died. So now, the very commandment, right? We're talking about the law. The law. What did Moses say again in Deuteronomy 4? This is what Moses proclaimed when he got the law. So you got to understand, y'all, no matter how wise Moses was, no matter how wise the children of Israel was, no matter how wise Micah and Malachi and all of those people was, David, Solomon, no matter how wise they were under the law, their wisdom came from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's a heavenly wisdom. It was in the Garden of Eden. It was a heavenly wisdom that they desired. Listen to the desiring of the heavenly wisdom throughout the law and the prophets. Understand what the Bible is trying to teach you guys. It was a heaven, man. How many of them people proclaiming to keep the law? The law is good. The law is great. The law is a light to my feet and all the more. Let's keep the law. Oh, law, great. The law is glorious. We should keep the law. Let's go back. Let's teach them the law. This is the covenant of God. Keep them the law. Man, that law sounded great. It was glorious. It was in the Garden of Eden. It was heavenly knowledge. It was spiritual. It was fantastic. But it wasn't what God wanted them to have. So this is what Moses said when he got the law. This is what he told Israel. This is your wisdom and understanding before all the nations. The people will hear this and say, man, what a great nation, wise and understanding people. With this nation, what manner of nation has these righteous ordinances and judgments according to all the law that the Lord has provided? What a glorious nation. That's the praise that they got from the law. But Christ came around having that same law, having those same scriptures. And this is what Christ told them in John 5:39. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. The very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. Yes, listen to how glorious Moses said they was. Listen to how the prophets stood on them. Listen to how glorious it is. Yes, Lord, if I follow this wisdom from Moses, if I follow these laws, statutes, and commandments, I have no choice but to have life. Listen to what Moses told him in Deuteronomy. If you do these things, today I present you life and death. Choose life. Christ said, if you think you have it, you look at those scriptures thinking you have eternal life, but you are missing it because they are their bear witness about me. Why would they bear witness about Christ? Mankind has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. That's the knowledge that God had. That's the knowledge that belonged to God. That knowledge bear witness of God. Yes, Jesus, the word God indeed. You got to understand what's being taught. Those scriptures bear witness of God. That's the wisdom of God that you're looking at. They bear witness about the Messiah. You think that that gives you eternal life. See, that's the problem. That wisdom that you partook of, you think that it did something for you. It was all about me. Remember in Genesis, he told them, do not eat from that tree. Then it goes on to teach. Man has become like one of us, knowing what we know. Now Christ is actually telling them, what you know, like us, you thought was going to bring you life. That wasn't bringing you life. That was giving you the wisdom about me and what I understand and what I know and what I do and how I operate from the heavenly realm. That's not what I had for you to do. And I'm going to show you one more and then I'm going to move on. I'm almost done. This is Exodus 19:5-6. And now, if, see, these are the image bearers, right? He's talking to the image bearers now, the people who's supposed to be in the image of God. He's telling them, if they will indeed hear his voice and keep his covenant, then ye shall be a people peculiar to me above all nations. For the whole earth is mine, and ye shall be to me a royal priesthood and a holy nation. These words shall thou speak to the children of Israel. Since you guys are going to be my image bearer under the law, you have stipulations. You have a quota to meet. The only way that you stay my image bearers is if you meet this quota. That's the relationship they had with the Lord. You understand? As soon as they partook of the law, that was the relationship that they would have with their God to the end of times, which is you got to do something in order to receive something. But not only do you got to do something, you got to do this whole law in order to receive blessings from me. So now, that was the image bearers after the law. That was the image bearers after the law. In Genesis 1, God said, let us make man in our image. In Genesis 3, man partook of something to become the image bearers of God. So now we found out that how Genesis 3 image bearers looked. We found out what happened when the people became the image bearers of God according to the law. Now let's see how a person becomes the image bearers of God according to God. Let's see how God makes someone an image bearer compared to how the law made someone an image bearer. 2 Corinthians 5:21. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Hold on now. According to 2 Corinthians 5:21, Jesus knew no sin, right? Jesus knew no sin. It's taught that all have sinned and came short of the glory of God. But it's also taught that Jesus knew no sin. So, how can all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God be equivalent to Jesus knew no sin? It's easy. Only God could do the law. Only God could do the law. The law belonged to God. God has a higher standard than mankind. God has more wisdom than mankind. So, the only person that can do God's law is God. That's why Jesus, the Word God, was the only one who successfully did the entire law his life. The only one. Because he was the only one that could do it outside of the Father. So that demonstrates that. But how did God, the Word God, start creating the images? John 13:34. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. Verse 35. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. So y'all see that quote that we said earlier, right? On what they said that John was teaching. Love for one another is all that he kept saying, because that's the commandment that Christ gave, and it's sufficient. So now the Lord is trying to show how he wants his image bearers to look, how he wants them to look on earth. He didn't want them to be his image bearers through law. He wanted them to be his image bearers through love. Let me show you how they looked at the image bearers through the law. This is how an image bearer through the law was perceived. 2 Corinthians 3:9. For if there was glory in the ministry of condemnation, the ministry of righteousness must far exceed it in glory. So that if we're going to be glorious, if we're going to be in the image of Christ, I mean, the image of the Lord through the law, that was glorious. They love being the image bearers of God through the law. They prized it 1,500 years or so. They prized being the image bearers of God through the law. But as soon as Christ came with the message of peace and love, how the Lord wanted his image bearers to actually be on earth, not through law, but through peace and love, this is what he said. This is what how Paul explained it. The ministry of righteousness must far exceed it in glory. Verse 18, 2 Corinthians 3 and 18. And we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. What happened? See, they already had the law. So they already had a glory. But their glory brought condemnation. So now they're going to be transformed from that glory to another glory, which was the same image of God, which was the Messiah, which was an image dealing with love and peace, which comes from the Spirit. That's the image in Genesis 1, 27 and 28, when God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. He's talking about peace and love, not law and condemnation. Proverbs 3 and 7. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. What did the law do? The law had them wise in their own eyes. What did he tell them in Deuteronomy 4? This is your wisdom before all the nations. The law had them wise in their own eyes. Philippians 3 and 9, talking more about the law. And be found in him, not having a righteousness of own that comes from the law, but that which comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God that depends on faith. So, what's being stated there? The Lord wasn't wanting self righteousness. Self righteousness came from the law. The law, I, 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 I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that, I did that. Now I'm good with the Lord. I did that. Now I'm saved with the Lord. I did that. Now I'm a true Israelite. I don't eat pork, so now I'm a good person. Uh, I don't. I celebrate these holy days, so I'm on one accord with the Lord. I do this, so I'm a better person than you. I do that. Self righteousness, right? But that's not the righteousness that the Lord wanted you to have. The Lord wanted you to have righteousness that depends on faith, putting all your trust in the Lord. See, these people was putting all their trust in the law. All their trust, all their life was in the law. The Lord wanted your trust to be in him. Romans 3:21 through 22. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. The, and that's through um, the faith that Abraham had and etc. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe, for there is no distinction. So if a person believed, they would have that righteousness of God, which through the faith that Christ, the Word, revealed the true Lord, the true Father to all, and how to be in his image. John 8 and 19, talking to the law followers. They said to him, therefore, where is your Father? Jesus answered, you know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. They had the law, but they didn't know the Father. They didn't have the true image. Words matter here, people. They didn't know what the Lord, how the Lord was. They knew the law. They knew condemnation. They knew rituals. They knew all of this stuff. And that to them, that made them the sons of God. They didn't really know God. Hebrews 11 and 6. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he reward those who seek him. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. You got to know that he's going to come through. You got to rely on him. If you don't, you can't please him. If you think you're doing law, now I deserve because I did this, I got to get that because this is what happened. That doesn't please God. It's not pleasing God that you're doing this, and this because you think you're obligated to do, or he will be mad at you. That's not pleasing him. What's pleasing him is if you see someone in need, you go help that person. Not just because he's your brother or sister, or you share some type of relationship, but random people you don't know, your average everyday Joe that you don't know, you go help them people. You show love to them people. You introduce them people to Jesus so they can become your brothers and sisters in faith. That's what pleased the Lord. Building a community of love. Galatians 3:26. For in Christ Jesus, you are all sons of God through faith. See, they was the sons of God through promise, through election, through law, through covenants, through bloodline, and etc. Or promises that was owed to the bloodline. That's how they were sons of God. But we find out that the true sons of God have faith, not law. So, in conclusion, the people wanted to be the images of God on earth through rules and regulations. That's what the people wanted. But the Lord wanted you to be his images through faith and love. Words matter, and we should listen to them so we can get the full understanding. So we have the two different atoms, the two different mindsets. One being the image of God through love and faith, and two being the image of God through law. We today are supposed to be the image of God through love and faith. Thank you all for listening in. This is Evan Israel from the Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler, as well as one of the lead instructors of RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. Thank you for listening in, and may we continue to bring the true message of the Lord.
Thank you for clicking on the video AOSD-Chandler. This is one of your favorite biblical instructors from RPK, that's Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. You know, one of your favorite biblical groups out there that's teaching the Bible from the ancient Hebraic mindset. Please also check out the other motion that we have going on. Go to Amazon, check out Instructor Joe Wad's book, Give Credit When Credit is Due, Credit Building for Kids. Also go to Instagram, where we have Instructor Michael Israel providing a product for a healthier lifestyle. Go to Alkaline is Life Shop on Instagram. And if you have not, make sure you cop the book, The Circumcision and Uncircumcision of Genesis chapter 1, Mystery of the Gardens Revealed.